Hello, good morning. Welcome to BBC News. I'm Victoria Derbyshire. Here are your headlines.
This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
More pressure on the Prime Minister to explain a Downing Street Christmas party last year after video emerges showing senior Number 10 staff laughing and joking about it. Number 10 insists there was no party at a time when tight COVID restrictions were in place. Grieving families say the video has made them really angry.
Drinks and cheese and canapes. This clearly was not a business meeting. This isn't about wiggling out of the rules when many people were arrested by the police.
Let me know what you think. What kind of sacrifices did you make to stick to COVID restrictions last Christmas? We've asked to speak to government ministers, but no one is available. We'll be talking to Conservative MPs this morning. Contact me on Twitter with your views at Vic Derbyshire, or you can email me, victoria@bbc.co.uk. Exactly 1 year after 90-year-old Margaret Keenan received the world's first approved COVID vaccine, the booster programme opens to over 40s in England.
We're live in Coventry, back where it all started. Maggie Keenan's been telling us how grateful she is to be the first person to get that first jab.
And coming up this hour, we'll talk to the first Afghan woman to practice as a barrister in England and Wales after coming to the UK as a refugee when she was 5. Good morning. Boris Johnson is under renewed pressure to admit a Christmas party was held in Downing Street last December after video emerged which showed senior staff laughing and joking about it. The video of officials holding a rehearsal of a press briefing was obtained by ITV News. Labour said it was shameful. Number 10 maintains there was no party and no COVID rules were broken. Scotland Yard is reviewing the video in relation to alleged breaches of COVID restrictions. At the time of the Downing Street gathering, Tier 3 restrictions meant people were encouraged to work from home. People in offices had to socially distance. And the law banned gatherings of 2 or more people indoors unless it was reasonably necessary for work. The party took place on the 18th of December last year when London was in Tier 3. The day after, London and parts of the South East were placed into Tier 4 restrictions, and millions had their Christmas plans cancelled. The footage obtained by ITV News is reportedly from the 22nd of December, 4 days after the party. Our political correspondent Helen Catt reports.
The Christmas tree is up outside Number 10. The lights are on. But it's what happened last festive season that's still raising questions. Claims that a party was held inside, which an attendee told the BBC involved food, drink and several dozen people. It happened, they said, on Friday, December the 18th. 4 days later, the then press secretary to the Prime Minister had a practice press briefing with aides pretending to be journalists.
On Twitter, that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home.
ITV News got hold of this video of it, with the aides joking about a party.
Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
On that day, there were severe restrictions in place on social mixing. On the day of the alleged party, 514 deaths of people with COVID were recorded. One of those who died that day was Jackie's mother, Beryl.
I think it's totally reprehensible, actually. When I first saw it, I had no words, to be honest, and it took a little while to actually sink in as to what I was watching. And I think this is actually indicative of a bigger problem within the government, that they think that they are above the rules and they can do exactly what they like.
The political backlash has started too.
Last year at Christmas, the public followed the rules and many of them didn't see their loved ones over Christmas. Some of them didn't see their loved ones again. They had the right to expect the government to follow the rules. And we now know the government broke the rules, they partied, and now they're laughing about it. They're treating the public with contempt.
Prime Minister!
The Prime Minister has been repeatedly asked about the party over the last week.
All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
We followed the guidance throughout and continue to follow the guidance. What I can tell you is that all the guidelines were observed.
But expect him to be asked a lot more. Some of his own MPs want answers.
We need to get ahead of this story today. The government, needs to show that it takes it seriously. It's understandable that the government wants to focus on this coming Christmas, not the last one, given the worrying development of this Omicron variant.
And for those who might have claimed this was just an obsession of the Westminster bubble, Anton Deck had an answer.
And this fictional party definitely didn't involve cheese and wine or a secret Santa.
Evening, Prime Minister!
The Department for Education has admitted it held a gathering earlier in December last year. A spokeswoman said it was to thank staff for their efforts during the pandemic, and that while it was work-related, looking back, they accept it would have been better not to have gathered in this way at that particular time. As for Downing Street, it insists there was no Christmas party at number 10, and COVID rules have been followed at all times. Boris Johnson can expect to be asked for a lot more answers at Prime Minister's questions later. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
The BBC has asked for anyone from the government for an interview. At this moment in time, no ministers have made themselves available. Let's talk now to Sir Roger Gale. He's the Conservative MP for North Thanet in Kent. Sir Roger, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us. What did you feel when you saw that video?
Incredulity. I think that the story broke at about 6 o'clock, and there were a lot of people in the tea room waiting for the vote last night. And I think there was sort of hollow mirth and complete bewilderment that this had happened. Whether this is the start of the whole rumour, the whole story, whether this was in fact a fake press conference, or whether there was a party, we don't know yet. Even now we don't know. You said, you trailed it as a party. Sorry, the phone's ringing. You said it as a party. Helen Catt said an alleged party. I think the Prime Minister has to come to the dispatch box today and either stand by the Downing Street line, which is that there was no party, and say that there was no party on the record. And if he says that, then I will believe him. Because, of course, to mislead the House of Commons would be a very serious offence indeed. Or he has to say he'd been blindsided by his team, he was misinformed, there was a party, and he apologises.
How will he be able to say there was no event, party, gathering, do, whatever we're going to call it? Because by all accounts, there was a gathering. Multiple sources have told the BBC, the Daily Mirror, the Guardian, a party did take place. We're told that Secret Santa was involved, which suggests that it was planned. How would the Prime Minister be able to stand up in the House of Commons at PMQs this lunchtime and continue to say, as his spokesman has,
well,
there
Victoria,
was no Christmas party?
I hope that by lunchtime, by Prime Minister's question time, the Prime Minister will have and therefore be able to offer all the answers, because this is serious. The Omicron pandemic is ongoing. The government may have to take more stringent measures between now and Christmas. If we're going to have to do that, if it's clinically necessary to do that, then we have to take people with us. We'll only take people with us if they feel that they're being told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So it is very important indeed. We need people to be vaccinated. We need people to go on being vaccinated. We need people to have their boosters. These are the messages that we've got to get out. And the entire House of Commons needs to send out that message from both sides of the House. I'm sorry the phone keeps ringing.
No, that's fine. Don't worry, don't worry.
I just have to ignore it now if it goes away. But, you know, this is distracting from the real importance, the real message.
Do you think this might end up being about semantics? What one person calls a Christmas party, somebody else in number 10 might call look, just a few drinks after they finish work with a glass of wine, and so they were in a work bubble.
Well, look, Helen Catt, who is a reporter that I know very well, who was with BBC Radio Kent and BBC South East before she became the BBC's political correspondent, told me last night that she had it on good authority that food had been brought in, that drink had been brought in, that entertainment had been brought in. And that sounds to me like a party. And if that was a party, it was wrong and it shouldn't have happened under those circumstances, under lockdown. And then we're facing, what, another Barnard Castle moment, aren't we?
What, you think is as serious as that, do you? When Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's top aide, allegedly broke the rules by driving from London to Durham when COVID restrictions suggested that people shouldn't do that?
Well, potentially, I think it's more serious because Dominic Cummings is a man who is known to act unilaterally and off his own bat. What he did was wildly irresponsible. I said so at the time. But this is an event that took place when it shouldn't have been taking place, apparently. We don't know, but apparently, in Downing Street. And the Prime Minister ought to know what's going on in Downing Street.
So let me ask you again, if the Prime Minister does say at lunchtime today there was no Christmas party, you will believe him?
If he says that on the record at the dispatch box, yes, I will have to believe him. Because to do otherwise would be discourteous and wrong of me. And if it is then found that he has misled Parliament deliberately, then that is a hanging offence.
Downing Street, his spokesman, has already said that there was no Christmas party.
Downing Street saying something and the Prime Minister saying something at the dispatch box are two different matters.
Okay.
I want to hear what the Prime... we have to be fair and courteous about this. I want to hear what the Prime Minister says on the record at the dispatch box at lunchtime today, and I'll form my judgment after that. And I started by saying, and I'll repeat, this is my view, my opinion. I'm not speaking for anybody. I'm not speaking for on behalf of the government. I'm not even speaking for any of my colleagues. I don't know what my colleagues are thinking. They may believe I'm profoundly wrong. I'm saying what I think, and that's all I can do.
And just to confirm, if the Prime Minister did mislead the House of Commons, you say that is a resigning issue?
I think the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady, would have to carry a very clear message to the Prime Minister under those circumstances.
Meaning what?
Meaning the game's up.
So a senior Conservative backbencher would go to the Prime Minister and say, we need a leadership contest?
Well, the chairman of the 1922 committee is not just a senior backbencher. He is the representative of the Conservative backbench. And I'm quite certain that Graham would do what he believed to be right at the time. But look, we haven't got to that stage yet.
Sure.
So let's not talk in hypotheses. I want to wait and see what the Prime Minister says today, and I'll exercise my own judgment. Again, it will be my judgment, nobody else's, when I've heard what the Prime Minister has to say.
There is anger amongst quite a few people who lost relatives to COVID around this time last year, around December the 18th. They weren't allowed to be alongside them in hospital. They weren't allowed to be alongside them in care homes. They can't believe it. Do you understand that?
Well, of course I understand that. This is about the probity of government. And Sir Charles Walker was absolutely right when he said on BBC this morning that we want to talk about this Christmas, not last Christmas. And about this Christmas, the government may have to take measures that require public support. And we won't get that public support, which will be a matter of life and death again. We won't get that support if the public don't trust us. Public have to have trust in the people that are representing them. That's why this is so crucially important. It's not, I'm not interested in Starmer's synthetic anger.
How do you know it's synthetic?
By tone of voice, really. I mean, I give him no credit for his performance in this at all.
What do you mean his performance? I mean, he sounds like...
I think he's doing, I suppose, what he has to do as leader of the opposition.
Right. Well, let's talk.
I regard the tone and the way that message is coming across with sizable degree of disdain, actually.
Okay.
Well, I want to hear from the Prime Minister.
We all do. Yeah, we all do.
I want to hear from the Prime Minister.
One final question to you, if I may, Sir Roger. There is a feeling amongst some voters, there is a perception amongst some voters that powerful people in the Conservative government don't need to abide by the rules. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. That is, everybody who is holding elected office has to abide by the rules that we impose upon other people.
But there is a perception that those at the top don't.
That's a perception,
yeah.
Victoria.
Perceptions can be damaging.
Of course, perceptions can be damaging. I accept that entirely. But it is a perception. Mostly, the people at the top of my party, the people, actually, to be fair, the people at the top of all parties do behave responsibility. For why? Because it's a courtesy to the public. What we're doing is not to protect ourselves. It should be to protect other people. You don't wear a mask to protect yourself. You wear a mask to protect those around you, those you love and those who you're working with. That is the purpose of that. And that is common courtesy. And we all have to abide by those rules.
OK, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Sir Roger Gale, Conservative MP. PMQs, of course, Prime Minister's Questions will be live here on the BBC News channel at midday. Right, let's cross to Downing Street now and talk to our Chief Political Correspondent, Adam Fleming. Adam, how serious is this for the government?
Well, we'll find out at midday when it's PMQs, as you were saying, and that'll be a moment to take the temperature on the backbenches. People who are paid to monitor the Conservative backbenches by the government think that Sir Roger Gale is in the minority, both in terms of Conservative MPs who are willing to go on the record to directly criticise the Prime Minister for his handling of this, and also in a minority of MPs who are really concerned about how this is playing out. But they will get another chance to just see if that's the case at Prime Minister's Questions. Also, this is a big opportunity for Keir Starmer to punch a very painful bruise. And does he do that effectively? David Lammy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, was on BBC Breakfast this morning, and he set out what Labour will be demanding of the government at lunchtime.
An apology, the facts, what actually happened, getting real and getting serious, recognising that this virus has cost lives, and those restrictions are important because he leads on public health, getting serious about the office he holds and apologising to the British people.
And there's mounting evidence that this isn't just a Westminster thing, this is a whole country thing. If you were watching I'm a Celeb on ITV last night, Victoria, a programme you know very well, Ant and Dec were joking about this issue for the second week in a row in front of millions of viewers who might not necessarily have been watching the news. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the COVID-19 Bereaved Families Campaign Group issuing incredibly strongly worded statements about how they feel about all of this. And also, just in practical terms, this is starting to get in the way of the government governing. We were expecting Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, to be on the breakfast programmes this morning to mark the 1-year anniversary of the first British person getting a COVID jab exactly a year ago. That was also going to be an opportunity to encourage people to get their booster jabs. Sajid Javid was nowhere to be seen. We were also penciled in a Prime Ministerial press conference for this afternoon, where the Prime Minister would be saying the same sort of thing. Will that press conference go ahead, or will it be cancelled? Because all the questions will be about a supposed Downing Street Christmas party, something else that happened almost exactly a year ago. Or maybe it didn't happen, because at least that's what Downing Street say.
Thank you very much, Adam. We are going to talk now to a member of the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice group that Adam mentioned, Safia Naga, who is a spokesperson for that organisation. Her dad, Zahari, contracted COVID last December and died in February. Safia, thank you very much for talking to us. How are you feeling about all this?
I mean, watching that video last night I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was absolutely bewildering and deeply unsettling. You know, my dad caught COVID over Christmas. The numbers were really bad at that point. I believe over 500 people died on the day that fake press conference with Allegra Stratton was held. And just to see the the cynicism and complete disregard for the their own regulations at a time where the country was locking down and, you know, keeping safe to keep their loved ones safe. It's just appalling.
But the Prime Minister says no COVID rules were broken.
Yeah, I mean, he may say that, but it doesn't look that way, does it? And I mean, I've just seen another video this morning of Jacob Rees-Mogg giving a speech at this alleged party. I mean, either way, we need a statement, and we need it quickly, and we need to understand what the facts are, what actually happened.
Does this help you in terms of your campaign for getting the public inquiry started or not?
Well, I suppose it is ammunition in a way. Unfortunately, you know, there have been a lot of mistakes made. I would much prefer that it wasn't that way. I think had those mistakes not been made, I would still have my dad around. He was in good health before he caught COVID. But yeah, I suppose it is. It is ammunition, and you know, it proves that we really need an independent inquiry into what happened during the pandemic and the way that it was handled, because clearly we can't necessarily trust the government rhetoric. You know, a lot of people weren't. I actually was able to be with my dad at the time that he died in February, but a lot of people didn't have that privilege. They were locked down and they couldn't get to a hospital at the time that their loved ones died, you know, and yet there were celebrations happening in Downing Street. It really is just so shameful.
What do you want from the Prime Minister this lunchtime at Prime Minister's Questions in the House of Commons?
Well, I think the truth would be a really good start. You know, an admission of what has happened, where they've gone wrong, and, you know, looking forward, a real commitment to showing the public that they do want to help and they do care about us, and you know, the fact that people are still dying from COVID. You know, there's you know, about 100 deaths a day. We really need to take this seriously, and until they really show that in their actions and bring an inquiry forward, I'm not sure whether we can believe them.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Sophia Nahr from the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice group. Going to talk to a couple of former Conservative MPs. First, Alistair Burt, who actually worked with Boris Johnson at the Foreign Office. Mr Burt, good morning to you. What do you think?
Hello, Victoria. Well, it's a mess, and it's a serious mess. I think sometimes Number 10 can see everything as a party political battle and can see a situation which they must defend at all costs, regardless of the impact on the rest of the country. This isn't a party political issue. It's obviously extremely serious. It's affected people up and down the country. They want to know what really happened. And the revelation of yesterday's video does the process of good governance, which is vital in a time of difficulty, no good at all.
When you hear the Prime Minister say on more than one occasion no COVID rules were broken, and you hear the Number 10 Downing Street spokesman saying no Christmas party was held, what do you think?
I think, first of all, people work very hard to produce a stream of words and a code of words in answer to a particular challenge, the line to take, that's very carefully drafted. We heard it this week when the line for all ministers was obviously, well, I wasn't there, so I can't comment. And one after another, they said the same thing. And what you've got to do is read through that and say what's really being said. I think it's perfectly possible that the Prime Minister has not been given all the information about what happened by Number 10, who can sometimes get quite above themselves and can make a number of decisions that the Prime Minister may be unaware of. But I think now he's really got to be very clear about what has actually happened. And if there has been, as everyone now believes, and the video last night would suggest, if there has been a gathering that would not have been eligible under the rules, he's got to say so today, apologise and start the recovery of good governance from that moment.
Which is what the Department for Education have done. The Mirror have reported today that there was an event, a party at the Department for Education when Gavin Williamson was the Education Secretary. A statement to the Mirror from the DFE said, you know, in hindsight, that shouldn't have happened. And
credit to them for taking that responsibility. It shouldn't have happened. Everybody should have stuck to the rules. We all stuck to rules last Christmas, even though it was quite difficult for some. And of course, absolutely tragic for others. So the Department of Education has obviously done the right thing in these circumstances. But of course, that shines the spotlight even more on what Number 10 was doing and the way in which Number 10 behaved. And I think the video is deeply hurtful. Not we all know that the team at number 10 work under great pressure. Of course they do, but they're not undergraduates, they're grown-ups, and not everything is a laugh. And you've got to be able to separate, the process of politics from the need for good governance in very difficult circumstances, and the bargain between the people and government at times of difficulty is a sense that everybody really is in it together. And if that is broken, as it was broken by Dominic Cummings last year, as Roger Gale in that excellent interview made clear, if that link is broken, then government can't do its job. You should have had Sajid Javid on today talking about the success of the vaccine programme, bearing in mind that first jab was just a year ago. And if Sajid can't do his job, and if people around the country who want to support colleagues that are doing difficult jobs feel undermined today by what has gone on, then the Prime Minister has got to take the opportunity today to clear it up and clear it out. Number 10 has got to behave properly.
Do you agree with Sir Roger Gale when he said if there is any misleading of the House of Commons then by the Prime Minister, then he must resign?
Well, I'm not going down that. I mean, you spoke to a member of Parliament about that, and Roger said what he said. I mean, the rule is very clear. You must not mislead the House of Commons. I would not expect the Prime Minister deliberately to do that. But everybody knows now that there has been a line about this, the alleged incident last year, and he's now under absolute pressure. He has to say definitively what happened.
Okay.
So I would imagine that today he's calling in people at number 10 to find out that the line that they have been giving him, if that is not accurate, then it has to change. And I would expect him to behave responsibly in the situation.
Thank you for talking to us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Alistair Burt. Let's have a word now with another former Conservative MP and Minister, Anna Soubry. Hello to you.
Good morning.
What's your reaction?
I agree with a lot of what's already been said by both Alistair Burt and, of course, by Sir Roger Gale. And I agree with what your correspondent was saying at Downing Street about how serious this is. But it's not just the fact that they broke the rules, and clearly they did have this party. They then lied about it, and there's no other word for it. It's not, oh, the Prime Minister didn't really get all the answers to the questions. Don't be fooled by that. Last week at PMQs, he knew the story had already broken, and he trotted out this line about no rules were broken. That is clearly not true as well. So it's not just even how bad it is about lying about it, it's then the fact that they laughed about it. This laughing at the rest of us who were abiding by the rules, because I'm afraid to say it goes to the heart of this government that it's basically being run by a liar, who is Boris Johnson, and that is his long-standing track record. We don't have grown-ups in number 10. And on top of all of that, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And as both Alistair and Roger quite rightly said, we need to have these big, strong public health messages to beat this wretched COVID crisis. And today was meant to be about vaccinations and persuading people, if you've not had your jab, go and get it. Go and get your booster. And instead, they've all run away like scared cowards that they are because of this failing of government right at its heart with our Prime Minister.
It's a really strong accusation to make, to say the Prime Minister has lied about this.
He has.
What's your evidence?
Lies about other things, Victoria.
No, but let's talk about this specifically. What's your evidence?
Because, look, so this is what happens, right? The Daily Mirror break a story, and it's a serious story because it's a serious allegation that essentially in the building where your home is, remember, where your office is as Prime Minister, there was a Christmas party that broke the rules. Any normal Prime Minister would be saying, right, get the top people in. What the hell's been going on? Is this true? Because you can bet your bottom dollar, Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, doing his job, is going to be asking these questions at PMQs that very Wednesday. So that is what would normally happen. You would demand to know. That's what happens when you're preparing for PMQs. You think about all the possible questions that are going to be asked.
Sure. And he was asked about it by Sir Keir Starmer, and the Prime Minister said he said no COVID rules were broken. And I'm asking you, how do you know he's lying? You were emphatic about it.
Because we know there was a party. It was the last Friday, by the way, before Christmas. So it's the end of the last working week before Christmas. We now know, you can be sure, your sources, excellent sources, your excellent reporters have said from good sources, we have that video now of Allegra Stratton laughing about it. You can be quite sure there was a party. And what our Prime Minister said, presumably having been briefed, was, here's the line. Alistair Burt's just explained it. Here's the line. No rules were broken. That's a lie, because the rule was very clear on December the 18th in London, no Christmas parties. So he thought he was being clever, but as ever, our Prime Minister was not telling the truth. There's a video, as you know, Victoria, on Twitter. It's been viewed by nearly 40 million people, that shows all the lies that this Prime Minister has told at the dispatch box. I wish the BBC would broadcast it, like other news outlets have, because it shows, and this is the history of Boris Johnson. He's been sacked from every job he's ever done. One of his former employers, hugely respected, Max Hastings, said he's unfit for national office. And I think what we're seeing is those of us who have frankly been saying this for a long, long time. One of the reasons why so many of us left the Conservative Party was because we know what Boris Johnson is like. He tells lies as easily as he takes a breath. Okay. And here we have yet another example. But it's not just the fact that they lied, it's the damage it's doing to this critical time in COVID, when we should be you should be talking today about, if you've not had your jab, get your vaccine, get your booster. Let's beat this. Let's not have another Christmas like last Christmas.
We are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that as well.
I know you will. You're doing a great job. But this is clouding all those really important public messages. And I think people sitting at home will say, sod it, I've had enough of this. If they can't follow the rules, why the hell should I? And we've heard from the victims, the families, and the heartbreak of those people and how they feel. They followed the rules, and it broke their hearts not to say goodbye to their loved ones. And they were partying in number 10, lying about it, and now laughing at people.
Thank you for talking to us. Former Conservative MP Anna Soubry, thank you for your messages as well. Sarah says, I am furious. My mum's funeral was 1 year ago. She died of COVID in a care home. There are just no words for this video of Allegra Stratton. Lorna says, please can we drop the politics of making headlines out of minor incidents like this? The government had been working very hard to keep the country working in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Don't they deserve a little break? And this from Ian. I watched that video of the press conference from last December, shown this morning, with anger. Another case of one rule for the public, one rule for government ministers and the inner circle. I was unable to spend last Christmas with my family, like so many families across the UK. If you want to let me know what you think, please do. You are very welcome. We'll feed your comments into the conversation. It's victoria@bbc.co.uk, or you can message me on Twitter or Instagram. Right, let's bring you the weather now. Here is Carol.
Thank you, Victoria. Good morning, everybody. Well, Storm Barra is still upon our shores, but is a weaker feature than this time yesterday. Still windy wherever you are, but not as windy as it was yesterday. Gales across parts of Wales, southwest England and parts of central southern England. We've also got a lot of showers rotating around the area of low pressure that is the storm, and some of those are going to be wintry and higher ground. Some will be heavy with hail and thunder and lightning, and it's also going to be a chilly day wherever you are. Now, through this evening and overnight, the centre of the low pressure pushes into the North Sea. We still have showers rotating around it. Some clear skies across northeast England. Central and eastern Scotland means it will be cold enough for a touch of frost. We'll also have some clear skies across parts of Wales, the southwest and Northern Ireland. So this is where we'll start with some sunshine tomorrow. But we still have this line of showers pushing eastwards and fragmenting. A lot of dry weather. And then later on, a new front comes our way, introducing some rain and some milder conditions across the far southwest.
Hello, good morning. It's Wednesday. It's just gone 9:30. Here are the headlines.
His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
More pressure on the Prime Minister to explain what happened at Downing Street on December the 18th last year, after that video emerges showing senior Number 10 staff laughing and joking. Number 10 maintains there was no Christmas party at a time when tight COVID restrictions were in place. Grieving families say the video has made them angry. 1 year after 90-year-old Margaret Keenan received the world's first approved COVID vaccine, the booster programme opens to over 40s in England. And coming up soon, we'll talk to the first Afghan woman to practice as a barrister in England and Wales after coming to the UK as a refugee when she was 5. Time for the sport. Here's Jane in Salford.
Good morning, Victoria. Well, it's been an embarrassing opening day of the Ashes for England, losing a wicket on the first ball and captain Joe Root going for a duck. In contrast, Australia were impressive, with their captain, Pat Cummins, taking 5 wickets. England will have to wait until tomorrow to try to make amends, though, after rain stopped play, as Joe Wilson reports.
No travelling fans permitted in Australia, but if you are brave enough to support England and live in Brisbane, well, hurry to your seats. You might miss it. The Ashes start and Rory burns. Ouch. Yep, that was the first ball of the series and it sure set the tone. David Malan departed with England's score 11, so England's captain was in. England rely on Joe Root hundreds. He made 0. Australia's new captain, Pat Cummins, got rid of Ben Stokes, and straight after lunch, Haseeb Hameed, who had at least defied for 25. But now what's this? The ball suddenly flying to the boundary at Jos Buttler pace. He had a partnership with Ollie Pope, and in the crowd, appreciation. For the neutral supporter, at least it was getting competitive for a bit. There was Buttler gone for 39. England were all out for just 147 after a fine catch. Another one. A wicket for Cummins. Another one. His 5th, in fact. Australia's captain walked off in a perfect world from start to tee. His side had dominated. The weather ruled out the final session. England's bowlers, with neither Anderson nor Broad selected, must be outstanding to stop the whole match slipping away on the second day. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Well, one glimmer of hope was Jos Buttler sharing a stand of 52 with Ollie Pope, who made 35. Pope says it's early days and England are not letting the bad start get them down.
Obviously, it wasn't the end result we wanted. We're not going to get too down about it now. I think both teams have obviously got a bat on this wicket. Disappointing start, especially. So there was frustration that we haven't been able to put on that big score that we wanted. But the pitch did offer a fair bit, especially early for the seam. So I think, obviously frustrated as a unit, but we're not going to get too down. It's a long tour, it's a long series. So got to keep the spirits high, come fighting tomorrow.
To the football now, and Liverpool are the first English side to win all 6 of their Champions League group games. They came from behind to beat AC Milan 2-1 last night.
We won all the games, which is absolutely incredible, and it's just another chapter in the history of this wonderful group of players. What they did in the last few years is exceptional, but it's nothing. It's not a prize, really. You win something where it's nice, but I would have taken each points tally to go to the next round, and 18 is the best, so we take that as well.
To add to their misery, Kyle Walker was shown straight red for that challenge. That means he'll miss the first leg of their last 16 match. They'll find out who they'll be facing on Monday. Boxing, and Tyson Fury's been ordered to defend his world heavyweight title against British rival Dillian Whyte. The WBC has named Whyte as Fury's mandatory challenger and given the two parties 30 days to agree a deal. After beating Deontay Wilder in October, Fury had a window to set up a huge unification fight with Alexander Usyk, who, if you remember, had just taken Anthony Joshua's 3 titles, but Joshua triggered his rematch clause. So Fury-Whyte is likely to take place in February or March of next year, with Cardiff or Manchester potential venues. More on all of those stories on the BBC Sport website. That's it for now, though. Victoria.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you. 20 to 10, good morning, Wednesday morning. Omicron does not appear to cause more severe disease than previous COVID variants and is highly unlikely to fully dodge the vaccine, according to a senior official at the World Health Organization. But the first lab tests of the new variant in South Africa suggest it can partially evade the Pfizer jab. Researchers found there was a very large drop in how well the vaccine's antibodies neutralised the new strain. And you may know it's been exactly 1 year since the first COVID jab was administered here in the UK. Since then, 81% of the population aged 12 and over have had 2 doses. The Medical Director of NHS England, Professor Stephen Powers, has been speaking to our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, about seeing that first COVID jab being delivered.
I remember at the time saying it was a moment of hope. It felt like an historic moment, and I still think that a year on, because of course vaccines are our main way out of this pandemic. The last year has been remarkable for the vaccine programme. We vaccinated in GP surgeries, in hospitals such as this, in pharmacies, but also in mosques, in football stadium, at racecourses. You and I were in Epsom Racecourse in January, I remember.
Very cold.
It was very cold. We've used the Pfizer vaccine. We rolled out the AstraZeneca vaccine in January. You and I were in Oxford to see that happen.
It was even colder there.
It was even colder. And then, of course, the Moderna vaccine. NHS staff and volunteers have done an absolutely marvellous job. First doses, second doses, and now boosters. Somewhere today in England, I'm pretty sure somebody will get the 100 millionth vaccine jab in England since we started a year ago. A remarkable coincidence, but testament to the great work of staff and volunteers.
Now, tell us about the change in the rules today for the over 40s.
Yes, well, last week JCVI changed their recommendation so that they're now recommending that the booster comes 3 months after the second dose rather than 6 months. So today we're opening up the national booking service so you can book anybody over 40, so over 40s can book that 3-month appointment. You can actually book it 2 months after your second dose, to be perfectly precise. 61 days after your second dose, you can book in advance for the booster 91 days, 3 months after the second dose. So if you're eligible, get online today and book it.
OK, but there has been a lot of frustration because the government trumpeted, putting the booster programme on steroids and said you could have your jab after 3 months. And there's been a lot of frustration from people that they haven't been able to get online and book.
Well, of course, we're opening up the national booking service today for the over 40s so they can have their dose 3 months, the booster dose. And of course we are expanding the vaccine programme once again. We're turbocharging it, as you say. So last week we set aside some of the administrative work that GPs do so that they are more able to do vaccine jabs this winter. We are advertising for 10,000 paid vaccinators today. We're working with St John and the Royal Voluntary Service to get another 42,000 volunteers into the vaccine programme. So you will see exactly, as you say, on steroids, turbocharged over the next couple of months to hit that target of offering a booster to everybody who's eligible by the end of January.
And how worried are you about the Omicron variant? Because hundreds of cases now, it's spreading in the community. Is this a race against Omicron and indeed Delta?
Well, we get concerned whenever we see a new variant that starts spreading. And of course, this one is particularly concerning because of the number of mutations, the number of changes, which means it looks different from previous variants. We are almost certain that it's going to be more transmissible, so it spreads more easily. But it's still early yet to know whether it will, the vaccines will be impacted and to know whether it has any difference in terms of the severity of illness it causes. But what's really important is that even if there is a drop-off in the way the vaccines work, the way that could be countered is by getting the booster dose. The booster dose massively boosts the antibodies in your blood, and by boosting those and having more of them, those will still work against this new variant.
Now, a video has emerged of Downing Street officials joking about a Christmas party last year. Now, you're an entirely non-political person, but how unhelpful is that for you as somebody who is encouraging people, have your booster, wear a mask, follow the rules?
Well, I don't know the details of it, but I will say what you would expect me to say as NHS Medical Director and what I've been saying since the start of the pandemic. Follow the guidance and be sensible. So for instance, if you're meeting people over the next few weeks, then do a lateral flow test. I did one this morning.
Is it unhelpful, though, that there seems to be one rule for those in power and one rule for the rest of us?
Well, I think the British public have responded magnificently to the pandemic in terms of following the guidance and, of course, coming forward for those jabs. I'm sure they will continue to do so, and the way the public can help the NHS over the next few months is when you get called, get your booster.
Refusing to be drawn. Let's talk to our correspondent Kath Burns, who is at University Hospital Coventry in Warwickshire, where that very first vaccine was given to Margaret Keenan a year ago. Hi, Kath.
Hey Vic, how are you?
I'm good.
So this morning we're in the vaccination clinic, I'm glad to hear it, and there's been a steady trickle of people coming in and getting their booster jabs, but really the main attraction is Maggie Keenan. There's a big picture of her on the wall where you can have a selfie with her after you've had your jab. And today she's been back here alongside matron May Parsons, who gave her that vaccine a year ago. You know, it's so lovely to see them. They sat there and had a coffee, a little bit of a hug together. There's a real genuine warmth between them. They say themselves, you know, they've got a nickname for themselves, Maggie May. And Maggie herself has been talking about how grateful she is to be the person to have that first vaccine, and also how she's a little bit of a celebrity now.
Sometimes I can't understand it really sometimes when people meet me in the street and they say, oh, you know, thank God for you, because I wasn't going to have this job. And it's lovely to hear that, you know, and even young people have spoken to me, and it makes me feel good.
Do you know, Vic, this time last year I was here for the rollout, and it felt like such a momentous time. After covering such a grim, dark pandemic, here we were with this glimmer of hope and light. There was so much, though, that we didn't know at that stage. We didn't know how many people would come forward for their vaccines. The government was hoping maybe 75%. The reality is closer to 90%. We also didn't know how good the vaccines were going to be. And actually, here's a really good stat for you. In the 4 months up to this time last year, the chances of dying from COVID, each COVID case, was 1 in 70. Now that has dropped right down to 1 in 290. So you can see that real world impact of how vaccines are making so much difference. But we also know now the vaccine protection doesn't last forever, which is why things like this, these boosters, are so important. We've got to come forward and get them. And the other thing we didn't know about then was variants.
Thank you, Kath. Thank you very much, Kath in Coventry. Right, let's talk now to Professor Adam Finn. He's a member of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. Professor Finn, hello. There are so many things to ask you about. I want to talk to you first about this research from South Africa, which suggests, and it's overnight, it's come in, Omicron does not appear to cause more severe disease than previous COVID variants and is highly unlikely to fully evade the vaccine. That's according to the World Health Organization, actually, not from South Africa. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think those are likely to turn out to be accurate predictions, although we're still a lot of uncertainty around this. It's looking like it's very transmissible. Hopefully it won't be causing more serious disease when it does occur. But of course, a more infectious virus means more cases, so that still does pose a problem. And in terms of vaccine evasion, what we're very hopeful for is that the protection against severe disease, which has held up really well against all the variants so far, will also hold up against this variant. Nevertheless, the vaccine, there are some data from South Africa showing that the neutralization of this virus is more difficult. And so that may mean that the vaccines, we really do need these boosters to bring down the rates of transmission.
OK. Can I ask you to reflect on the first approved COVID vaccination in the arm of Margaret Keenan 12 months ago, and the speed with which public and the private sector came up with these vaccines?
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable, isn't it, to reflect that it's already a year since that first dose was given and what's been achieved, but even more so what was achieved before that first dose was given in less than a year, going from the first reports of this virus in China to having one and then several vaccines available that all turn out to be very effective. All the way through 2020, you know, we were working away at this, but really didn't know what we were going to end up with. And so it was a great moment when we saw that first dose going in and the NHS cranking up its efforts and getting things started in such a remarkable way.
I wonder if I can ask you if you agree with certain politicians that this discussion about whether there was a Downing Street Christmas party in this video that has emerged is a distraction from the government's messaging on wanting people to get boosters.
I don't think my opinion on that is really something anyone would want to hear. I'm really here to talk about the vaccination programme rather than the politics of all of this. But the thing is, according to some, the two have actually come together, because
It's saying it's a distraction from the messaging. It's also potentially a time when voters might go, well, you know what, if they're doing that, then why should I do what they want me to do?
Well, I think what we can say is that the British public have been remarkably supportive of this vaccine programme. It's something that we've all contributed to, not only domestically but globally, in terms of generating our own vaccine, which is making a big difference. And now people are coming forward in very large numbers to get their additional boosters that we advised about last week. So I'm confident that people will continue to support this programme and will come on board and continue to follow the advice from JCVI, that is to receive these vaccines when they become available.
And just finally, explain to our audience, why is the booster, the third jab, so important?
Yeah, this is really important. And as the data I just mentioned from South Africa re-emphasises this. The antibodies that we've all got from the vaccines we've received, and those of us who've been infected as well, protect us against these new variants. But this variant is going to need even more antibodies. And the COV Boost study that was published on Friday, led by Saul Faust from Southampton, confirms that by having this third dose, you can really jack up the levels of antibodies in your blood very substantially above those that you had after your second dose. And that's what we need at this point in order to get ahead of this new variant and avoid another wave of hospitalisations.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Again, thank you, Professor Adam Finn. This year, almost half of the BBC 100 Women list is made up of Afghan women. The list, by the way, is 100 of the most influential women around the world, and there's loads of information about it on the BBC website. Now, the resurgence of the Taliban in August 2021 changed the lives of millions of Afghans for the worst, with girls banned from receiving secondary education, the Ministry for Women's Affairs being disbanded, and many women being told not to return to work. Yelda Hakim has been covering the developments in the country.
Every year, the BBC names 100 inspiring and influential women as part of the BBC 100 Women's season. And this year, for the first time, 50 of these women are from one country, Afghanistan. This year's season will recognise the stories of Afghan women, the scope of their bravery and their achievements after the Taliban took control of the country earlier this year. Over the next 4 days, BBC 100 Women will also share the stories of women around the globe who are hitting reset and creating lasting change. 2021 has been a year when many women, especially those in Afghanistan, have had to reinvent their lives. Mahbouba Siraj, women's rights activist and one of the women named on today's list, spoke to me in Kabul.
The trouble that Afghanistan is in right now, apart from the whole political whatever of it, is poverty, is brain drain, a collapse of a society, and a country on the verge of becoming in pieces, of being destroyed.
You've become now the public face of Afghan women in Afghanistan, someone who's remained and calling on others to come back. But what are they coming back to?
What they're coming back to is not really very, very, very different from what they have left. That's something I want to tell them. But by not working on it, and by not being around, and by not raising our voices, and by not asking the right questions at the right time, and by not bringing everything to the attention of the ones that is, taking care of things, whether they are the Taliban, they are the Afghans, they are the international community, it can get a lot worse. For them to come back now, we can start working again and make things happen again for Afghanistan. Because I'm sure there's going to be a day when Taliban are going to realize that without women, it's just not going to happen.
Let's talk to Rahana Popal, who's a public law human rights barrister. She is a former Afghan refugee. She came to the UK when she was 5, and now she works to help and support other Afghan refugees. Thank you very much for talking to us. What is your reaction for being on this list?
Shocked, privileged, surprised. It's a real honour, especially to be alongside such formidable women who are also on the list, like Malala Yousafzai being one of them. And it's just a real privilege. Thank you.
Tell us about the work you do to help other Afghan refugees.
At the moment, specifically, I'm working very heavily in helping Afghan interpreters. So these were individuals who worked alongside British forces. They served in Afghanistan. And these are individuals who were eligible under the Arab scheme, but who have been left behind, and trying to find ways in which they can come to the UK, and equally those who have got refusals against their decisions, and trying to legally challenge or bring challenges against those refusals.
Okay. And what has it been like for you coming here aged 5? How have you found it growing up in Britain?
It's been, I mean, when I go back to my childhood, and I look back at how things were, it makes me feel really old to kind of go, oh yeah, when I was in the 90s. And I get, the world has changed, specifically London has changed significantly. I look back at my time and I realise how lucky I was, how fortunate I was. And specifically to go back to a point in one of your reports, which was the Taliban's announced that children can't carry on with secondary school education. I look at the very privileged position that I'm now in. But that's because of the power of education. And that's now something that young Afghan girls in Afghanistan will now be deprived from. So I look back with memories and with fondness at my time in the UK so far.
And explain the reasons why you came aged 5.
So what happened was, at that point, it was the civil war was unraveling in Afghanistan. So the Soviets had withdrawn in 1989, and civil war had broken out between the Northern Alliance and between the then Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 90s. There was a missile attack on our family home, and it then became untenable for us to stay in Kandahar, and we had no choice but to flee.
How do you feel for those who have also wanted to flee in recent months but haven't necessarily been able to since the Taliban took over the country again?
It's really hard. I mean, in clients that I have who are still in Afghanistan, I speak to some of them, and one of them says to me, they go, look, if this doesn't work very soon, I've got no choice but to, for example, get my youngest daughter wed because I'll get a good price essentially for her. And these aren't decisions that these individuals make lightly. These are hard decisions. And I look and I think that so easily could have been me. I could have been in that situation. And so I have every sympathy and empathy with those individuals who still remain there, who are just desperate to seek a better life, a peaceful life.
Okay.
So my heart does go out, and I try to do the best that I can on my side, on what I can do from over here.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us, and congratulations again. Thank you. Thank you, Rehan Popel. Right, let's bring you a full weather forecast just before 10. Here's Carol.
Thanks, Victoria. Good morning, everybody. Storm Barra is still across our shores, but continuing to weaken. Now, having said that, it's going to be windy wherever you are today. At the moment, particularly windy across the Northern Isles and also across the Irish Sea in towards the English Channel. Here we've got gales. We also still have a rotation of showers or longer spells of rain moving around the centre of the storm, and some of those will be heavy and thundery with some hail and wintry on the tops of the hills in Scotland. Temperatures between 6 and about 9 degrees. Now, through this evening and overnight, once again, our area of low pressure, Barra, moves into the North Sea. Still a rotation of showers going around that storm, and still cold. Cold particularly across northeast Scotland, central and eastern England as well, where we are looking at a widespread frost. So tomorrow we start off with all these showers across some central areas. They'll tend to fade through the day. There'll be a lot of dry weather. And then by the end of the afternoon, the next system will be coming in from the west, introducing some rain. And behind that, the wind will start to pick up a bit. But these are our temperatures, 7 to 9, but in the southwest, milder at 10 or 11.